the world is happening with King County real estate? Well, we're starting with the supply and demand graphs for the last 10 years, just so you can get a sense of what last year looked like compared to everything else. And we can talk a little bit about that, and then we'll dive in. The green are the new listings. That's the supply. The blue is the demand, the number that went under contract in each month. And you can see we had a really sort of stable flow until COVID of listings, increasing listings. Okay. Then COVID happened and everything fell off the chart in terms of listings. And then, but the buyers remained strong because at 2.5%, 3% interest, everyone could afford something, or more people could afford stuff. And then you can really see that started to fall away, the buyers, and started to fall away in 2022. And then in 2023, people stopped selling. Look at that down in the green at the end there. That's a massive decrease. It's a 50% decrease in the number of transactions that happened because no one's selling a house to go from 2.5% interest to 7%, 8% interest. People just aren't doing it or weren't doing it last year. So we anticipate that kind of thing beginning to stabilize as both the interest rates begin to drop and people get used to it. More and more people are going to wind up having to move because people have to move from time to time. So that will unwind. And you can see last month, buyer demand was up compared to last year. It was almost the same in terms of supply over the last 2 years. That this year is shaping up. It's at least solid. Certainly doesn't look like it's going to get worse for the market, for the overall market for buyers or sellers in 2024 than it was in 2023. In fact, it could, like I said, as things start to unwind, turn closer to what we would consider normal given the historic numbers that you saw when I showed you the previous 8 years, the 8 years prior to this, that it could start to approach that. I don't expect it to get up that high, but it wouldn't be surprising to see it get back to 2022 levels. I don't anticipate 2023 levels continuing. So what does that mean? Well, when you look at prices, in King County overall, pretty flat last year, right? That the interest rate has put a cap on what people can pay. Not a surprise, right? But not a huge decrease in value. So what does it mean? It could mean that if you're selling, you're still in a very strong seller's market. You just can't price it the way you would in the past. You can't price it expecting bidding wars. Now, it just depends. These numbers here in January, February are really sort of bidding war numbers. That's really close. You have the right house priced the right way in King County, you should be able to get a bidding war. If we get back to 2022, not so much. Now, every neighborhood is different. Every house is different. A block sometimes makes a radical difference in the value of a house. So you got to do a deep dive on the value of the house that you're looking to sell or buy and have a realistic expectation that you have missed the peak in terms of values, at least for the next year or so, that it's not predictable that values are going to go up the way you could see them going up in the past. That's a pretty great graph from 2014 up. Unlikely that you're going to see that trend continue. More likely you're going to see this flat trend continue. So if you purchased in the last couple of years, the chances of you making back that money, not great. Chances of you getting a bargain from, if you're shopping, from someone who's looking to sell, pretty solid. If you're selling, you shouldn't have a problem selling. You just can't expect the kind of increase in value that you could have had you sold 2 years ago. That's just the way that is. But like I said, every house is different. Everyone's situation is unique. And that's where I come in. If you want a detailed analysis, either from a buyer perspective or a seller perspective, reach out, give me a call. It doesn't cost anything. Happy to tell you the value of your place. But this also shows why using Zillow doesn't make very much sense, because everything is unique. Every house, everything shows up as a different profile. Okay. So let me know what I can do for you. My name's Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at eXp Realty. I look forward to helping you. what in the world's happening with Kitsap real estate? Let's check it out. This is, every county is different. If you watch the Pierce County or the King County, or they're different. A couple things you can see. This is 10 years of supply and demand. This is the green is the supply and the blue is the demand. Okay. Green is the number of new listings. The blue is the number of ones that went under contract. And you can see that, up until the pandemic, pretty steady increase. Pandemic happened. People stopped selling. 2020, you can see that. But in 2021 and 2022, people went back to selling their houses in Kitsap County. That's not the way it is in King County. Different counties, different areas have different reactions to things. And then it really all fell off the charts last year. And that was similar to everywhere else. That the 8% interest rate stopped people from selling. No one was jumping from a 2.5% interest rate to an 8% interest rate unless they had to. And the buyers went away. First of all, there were less listings, and then 8% made it harder for them to shop. So that was last year. If you look at just year over year, if you just look at the last 2 years, you can see that this is a deeper dive into Kitsap County, and you could begin to see different things, right? You can, first of all, January this year was like January last year, a little bit below January of 2022. The general, I thought, is that we're going to have a year closer to 2022 levels than 2023 levels, just given interest rates are beginning to drop. They may drop more given it's an election year. And those people that held their houses didn't sell. Some of those people are going to have to sell. People have to sell their house at some point, happens. And some of those people are going to jump into the market despite having held out for a year. So, you could think that 2024 is going to start to play out closer to 2022, meaning there'll be more to choose from. Last month was a super high demand period relative to the number of listings, which is why I always tell people listing in the winter is a better deal because there's less competition and the buyers are there. And that was the case in January. February last year was a dip in the number of houses, but in 2022 it was an increase in the buyers. I would expect it to go up a little bit. I don't expect it to go down in February, but we will see. In the meantime, given, if you just go watch the King County and the Pierce County videos, and you'll see every month is different. I'm sorry, every county is different. Every block is different. That where you're buying, the conditions around that particular house are unique. And your situation is unique. As a buyer, it's unique. Many times it pays to wait. Sometimes it pays to move forward. You don't know until you check it out. And that's what I'm here for. Here to help people decide what the best path forward for them is given their exact circumstances. So that's free. Happy to consult for that. Let me know what I can do for you. Aaron Hendon with Christine & Company at eXp Realty. I'll talk to you soon. What in the world is happening with Pierce County real estate? Well, let's check it out. This is a supply and demand chart of the last 10 years. Okay, green is the supply, the number of new listings that came to market, and the blue is the demand, the number of homes that were sold that month. And as you can see pretty clearly that in 2014, up right until the pandemic, we had an increase in inventory every year. Peaks were higher, and buyer demand was pretty solid through that time. Then COVID happened and people stopped selling their home, and you could see the drop in listings right there in 2020. But demand was still really high in 2020 and 2021, given the interest rate environment. Then 2022 happened and people were still selling, but the demand dropped considerably because interest rates started to go up. Then in 2023, everything fell off the table. People stopped selling because interest rates really spiked and buyers could no longer afford it. And that really was about half the number of deals got done because people stopped selling their home. If you just look at the last 2 years for a deeper dive in Pierce counties, you begin to see what happened month to month. And let's look at January compared to January. January of this year was a super hot seller's market in Pierce County. The demand exactly met supply. That's bidding war material. In fact, it's just slightly down in terms of buyers from last year, but up a little bit in terms of sellers. So there's it was really close. And the same thing happened last January, which is why I always tell my sellers winter is a really good time to sell because very few people do it. Now, if you want to start forecasting this out, it would make sense as interest rates start to unravel, they start to come down a little bit, people get used to it, and they're more likely to have to sell, just given if they didn't sell last year, some of those people are going to need to sell. You could start to see us get back to 2022 levels. I don't think we get above that. I mean, maybe it comes up to 2023 levels, but it's probably, can't really say with a whole bunch of certainty, but it wouldn't be surprising if we got to 2022. Be surprising if we stayed at 2023 or we got all the way back to 2021 levels. So let's assume we're looking at a market like 2022 this year with, more deals getting done, more selection than last year, a little bit more buyers than last year, meaning you got to take care of each situation uniquely. If you just look at Pierce County median values, you can see last year the values leveled off. Buyers couldn't pay as much. There wasn't as much activity. Pretty flat line there for 2023. 2022 was really the end of that rise in values. It's a pretty straight line before that. So do we start to inch up in values? Could be, but it's hard to see that you're going to get the kind of slope you had from 2014 and up. It's hard to see you're going to continue to get those double digits in increased valuations. Meaning if you bought in 2021 sometime or later, it's unlikely you're going to see the kind of increase in value that you bought into. When you bought in 2022, you were used to seeing double digits and you could expect that would continue, and that didn't. And I don't see the scenario where that goes back that way anytime in the next 18 months. Every time you look at buying, every time you look at selling, every neighborhood is different. Every block is different. Really, it takes a deeper dive into each situation to really be able to tell anything significant about the value of your property, which is why Zillow is such a waste of time. So if you're interested in either buying or selling and you need a deeper dive into what you're looking for, your particular situation, give me a call. That's completely free. Happy to give you a valuation on either side, buyer or seller side. Let me know what you're looking for, and I'll let you know what you can expect. My name's Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at eXp Realty. That's what's happening in Pierce County. I'll see you later. Hey, what in the world is happening with Snohomish County real estate? Let's check it out. This is the 10 years supply and demand chart for Snohomish County. Okay. Green is the supply, the number of listings that came to market. Blue is the demand, number of ones that went under contract. And you can see over the course of 10 years. And if you watched the other updates, this looks more like Kitsap County, but it's still unique. And it's definitely, it doesn't look like Pierce, and it definitely doesn't look like King County. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But what you can see is that up until the pandemic, we had a pretty steady increase in listings every year, and buyers held steady. And then the pandemic happened and people stopped listing. Buyers' demand remained strong in 2020 and in 2021 when interest rates were 2.5%. Then in 2022, as interest rates increased, buyers went away. And then last year, the sellers went away too. That's about a 60% drop in activity in the market, because who's selling a 3% house that they have at 3% when they have to move to a house for 8%? Only people who have to, which we feel will unwind over the next couple of years, because people have to move at some point. People are always moving. So those that held on will likely jump into the market this year, especially with interest rates coming down. Election year probably come down a little bit more than normal. There you go. But if you look at January, this is a completely perfect visualization for why I recommend that people sell their homes in the winter, because there's less competition and the demand is pretty strong. The demand outstripped supply in Snohomish County. So if you listed at a reasonable price, let's talk about pricing for a minute. You can see in Snohomish County, you had a really steady increase up until basically last year, where it leveled off. So if you were expecting to get these kind of double-digit gains in 2023, you didn't, and I don't see how you get them in 2024. It'll probably start to go up, but it's hard to imagine that you get this kind of a slope again without interest rates dropping massively. So what you can expect is maybe you wind up like 2022, where there's an increase in the number of houses that you could buy if you're a buyer, that you could hit these numbers again. It's unlikely you get to 2021 levels, but I don't think 2023 is going to get repeated. Okay, you had a repeat of 2022 already in terms of the number of buyers or sellers roughly. It was better than last year, and I would anticipate it continues to get better as the year goes on. But if you watch those other videos, you can see that every neighborhood is different. I mean, every county is different, so you know every neighborhood is different, every block is different. So you really do need to take the time to do a deeper dive on your situation, because everyone's situation is unique. Both sellers and buyers have unique situations. Some people are highly motivated, some people don't need this. All that information becomes grist for the mill of the calculation. And that's what I do for people. I'm happy to do that for you for free. Check out your situation. Give me a call. Let me know what you're dealing with, and let's take a look and see what you can expect to either get or pay for a house in the area you want. That's what I'm here for. Aaron Hendon with Christine & Company at eXp Realty. Talk to you soon. Peace. Hey, what in the world is happening with Vashon Real Estate? What? Let's check it out. All right, this is the last 5 years of supply and demand. I'm putting this up just so you get some perspective on the longer term trends. Okay. If we sent this out, let me send it out actually a little bit further, about 10 years, you get to see it even a little bit more clearly that, there was a time, the green are the new listings and the blue are the sold, depending, the one that went pending that month. That's supply and demand in my world. You can see that we used to hit peaks of 35 or 40 houses, right? And then the pandemic happened and we barely get to 25. And that seems to be, 3 years is a pretty decent size. Last year wasn't COVID. But last year was the spike in interest rates, which made it really difficult for people to sell. Like who's moving from a 3% interest to an 8% interest? No one, unless they have to. So I think you're going to see that continue this year as that begins to unwind. That is, interest rates stabilize, drop a little bit. Election year might drop further than normal. People may get encouraged to sell like that. And then buyers not only are limited in what they can afford, but the whole idea of getting a second home, and that was driving the market here on Vashon in particular during COVID, the cheap interest rates and the idea that you could work from home, do whatever you wanted, all went away. And you can see that here at the end of last year, it just went away. And you got to take Vashon statistics with a grain of salt because data insufficiency is a real deal. So, this spike, you sell a couple more homes and it shows up as a drastic spike. If you look at just the last 2 years, you get a clearer month-to-month picture. And just comparing January's to January's, same number of listings as 2023. Last month was the same number of listings and more than 2022. So could we see a repeat of 2023 in terms of the number of listings? We could. I mean, it's went that way so far. Still too early in February to have any read on what February is going to bring. And the number of buyers was similar this year as to last year. So right now, I don't see any evidence of there being any radical shift. The particular, there's a particular graph that's also of interest on Vashon just in terms of pricing. Let's just look at that real quick so you can just get a sense of what prices are doing on Vashon based on that same kind of supply and demand. If that supply and demand continues, you could think that the price would be similar. So all price ranges on Vashon really flat, right? With a little bit of a drop towards the end of the year. But basically 2022, 2023 were that's a really flat graph in terms of median price. So, if you go out further, you can see that it's been pretty steady increase for all of Vashon. Now, waterfront is different than non-waterfront, higher. Every way you filter that shows a difference in the pricing structure. For example, I was working this out for a client yesterday. If you just looked at only waterfront from the peak in 2022, massive drop. But again, you got to deal with data sufficiency because there's just not overall, if you're looking on Vashon, it's a pretty flat graph. Certain segments have different prospects, okay, different experience. And that's why it's super important that when you work with someone, to price your home, you're not just looking at Zillow. You're not just looking overall at too big of a bucket because each bucket has a different profile. So when you're shopping on Vashon, the same thing applies. You want to work with someone who's familiar with the bucket you're looking at, waterfront, not waterfront. If we exclude waterfront here, you see a much different graph. So overall values on Vashon have gone up, stayed up. If you look at only waterfront on Vashon, they went up and went down again. So again, just different buckets, and the same kind of variable would happen if you checked out different prices. Every bucket is different here on the island. So, if you're interested in buying or selling on the island, we should talk because your situation is unique. And every house on Vashon, the north end compared to the south end is different. Everything is a little bit variable. So if you're shopping on Vashon or looking at a list on Vashon, make sure you get the information for your particular house that shows how your house is likely to perform or the houses you're looking at have recently performed so that you don't overspend or get outbid for something. So if you're interested, that's what I do. I talk to people all the time, make sure they make the wisest choice for them. My name's Hendon with Christine and Company at eXp Realty, and I will talk to you soon.